Hey friends. I had a wonderful Qigong and meditation session this morning. And it's a weekend morning. Annalise is still asleep, even though it's an hour later than when she usually wakes up. But she didn't nap yesterday, which usually works out something like this. And I had a couple things. I had something come through in meditation that was related to something that was kicking around my mind yesterday. And essentially, well, let me start with what happened, with where things started today. Because today, I was sitting in meditation, and I just had this sense. I had a some days, anybody who's meditated, I'm sure, can relate to this. Some days, there's more agitation in our system, and some days there's less, right? I mean, some days our mind is very active and seems to have a lot of momentum, and other days settling into ease, settling into stillness is easier. And of course, the practice is to continually condition ourselves to have access to stillness, because access to stillness is everything. Access to stillness is it's how we connect with the foundation of existence, and then that activity sort of takes on its proper proportion in our life, as opposed to being over prioritized or overemphasized or overly important, right? When all we see is activity, then that activity, what's happening in that activity is incredibly important. If we have access to a reservoir of infinite potential, infinite peace, infinite power at all times, that activity, we can let it go a little more. It's not so important how things work out, which I think is a healthy thing, obviously. That's how that's how we kind of gain repose and gain poise in life, by knowing that we are something beyond the activity of the mind, the activity of the world. So that's what I was sitting with this morning, and I was finding a deep sense of stillness. And I think sometimes about, what's the spiritual journey all about? Where is it going? It's like, and in a moment like this morning, what showed up was, this is it. This is where it's going. Stillness, that sense of deep underlying peace. And it doesn't have to be peaceful, it doesn't have to be without activity, but that sense of rootedness, that sense of consciousness. It's both like my feet are on the ground, and also infinitely expanding into the far reaches of the universe. It's both inward and outward. It sort of embraces all. And I think, as someone who's always been a bit fascinated by the idea of enlightenment, and I've been drawn to various figures and teachers who have either have had those experiences, and it's generally kind of evident, or are on a similar path. They have a similar resonance with that path that I do. I've been drawn to those people over the years, and it's, I sometimes, we wonder. I think sometimes what happens, and this is where it plays into my kind of thought from yesterday, is I think when we see a great teacher like that, it's easy to project onto them our illusion of what enlightenment might look like. Because to the extent that we're still kind of not there yet, we have an image. It can only be an image of what that would be. It can't be the real thing. It can only be a limited version of it. But that's what we're going to hold as our truth until we go through the process of gradually releasing it. And this is why being a spiritual teacher is such a dicey thing, because you're what better surface onto which to project our various hopes and dreams and images of life, images of perfection, than a highly realized being. They make a perfect screen to project all that onto. And so then, kind of circling back to my insight from yesterday, or my thought from yesterday, I was thinking about my teachers. I've had a number of incredible teachers. It's one of the things I almost sort of, it's one of the things I'm most grateful for in my entire life, is the number of incredible teachers I've had. I almost can't believe it, how many of these people have kind of come into my life, and it affected me in ways that are ongoing. I can go back and look at my life and identify moments and phases with teachers that I still reference every single day of my life, and or a lot of times they give me practices that I still perform every single day of my life. So I just have this. It's like it's a huge part of my life is having had these brilliant teachers. And one of my experiences with them generally is that, there is sometimes, especially when I was younger, this doesn't happen as much now. I still have great teachers now, but this thing that I'm about to talk about doesn't happen as much. Although I'm not convinced that it couldn't happen. But that thing of projecting the kind of the idealized version, or the kind of our own fantasy onto the teacher. I have always, I've definitely had that experience, and then I've had the experience of kind of falling out of that, like the moment where you realize the teacher is a human being, with foibles like any other human being. That's a moment that I've identified a number of times as well, and you kind of eventually get to where you know that's the case, and even as we might be gripped by a new presence, somebody who seems to hold a lot of potential in our life, like for me, like right now, Madeline is a teacher who's just opening doors that I've never been able to open, and it's blowing my mind what she's able to communicate. And so I'm just on this stunning journey with her. But at the same time, I'm a mature enough person now that I don't quite have the same level of projection onto her that I might have if I was younger, when I was younger. But there's that moment when we realize that they're human, and it a lot of times then the fantasy, it's like the projector shuts down, and we're just looking at the human being. And if we're really invested in our fantasy version of them or of what they represented, that's a disappointing moment. That's a fall from they seem to fall from grace, but really nothing has happened other than that we have finally come around to understanding that that person is a human being and not whatever we were projecting onto them. So, you know, and that may be a process that's familiar to others. But what really stood out to me yesterday as I was thinking about this is that there's an incredible gift in that. And this is where it comes in. It starts to feel like this is just the nature of these relationships. I would almost say it's kind of like an archetypal feature of these of relationships with teachers of the kind that I'm describing. Because as we identify them as humans, as we let go of that, or, you know, maybe if we're a mature person, maybe we're already there. Maybe we're able to embrace this early on in our relationship with the teacher. But their humanity and the gap between the image that we've been projecting and who they really are, in witnessing that gap, in realizing that they are simply a human being, they give us the gift of ourselves, because no one fills that gap for us, right? It's a moment where our own fantasy dissolves and we perceive the gap. And our fantasy, FYI, might not be it might not be something unrealistic or unrealizable. It just might be not what they are. So but in that gap that they give us the chance to realize that we are our own teacher. We are our own ultimate teacher. And that, you know, it's almost like I've had these experiences of teachers coming into my life and being with me for a while. And then there's kind of like a decoupling that happens. And, you know, by and large in my life, it's happened in a pretty healthy way. I'd say it's happened in a way that is where that moment happens in a way that is organic and not doesn't have to leave behind any resentment or any it doesn't have to be a problem, basically. But there is a shift, and it's kind of like it's almost like a sign off or a decoupling, and in that space, it's like they give us ourselves, and this is what was coming through again this morning, is it's not that this is it. It's not that this right now, here in this meditation right now, this is all I will ever feel. That's not what I was experiencing. But I was experiencing a sense of this is the heart of the work. There's no other heart of the work. There's nowhere else to go. Me sitting with myself, that's it. That's the whole ball of wax. That's where all the steps will be taken. That's the ultimate relationship. You know, my own relationship to myself. And as we, I mean, the beautiful thing about having had some great teachers is they've given me skills. You know, I picked up things from them, and I can utilize those. But they have to become mine. They have to be. I have to become my own teacher. You know, and it sounds so kind of cliche and so simple when I say it, but it's actually a profound moment every time that that's happened to me, that I've had that experience of recognizing that no one else can give me this, or that I am the one to fill this gap. It's an empowering moment. It's a humbling moment. It's an inspiring moment. It's an uplifting moment. It's a sobering moment. It's all these things. It's like the first thing I was saying. It's like rooting into the ground and expanding into the entire universe at the same time. You know, and I would absolutely say my practice today couldn't be where it is if it weren't for all these teachers. There's just no way. I don't know. You know, I don't know how you get there. A really good teacher is a gift. And they're not going to get us there. We have to get us there. We have to it's our job. So that's where I am this morning, people. And Annalise is still asleep. Wow. I'm getting all kinds of bonus time this morning. Appreciate you. Thank you. Love you. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.